Well, hello there! So here's the second part of my little vignette build, which will consist of working on the figures and building the base. Unfortunately, practically all the footage of the figures didn't come out good, most of the videos being out of focus, dark, or my hands were in the way. Amateur! Hence, I will spare you the agony and will show you only a few glimpses of footage as a compliment to my explanation of what I'm doing and how I got there. So the assembly of the figures consisted of repetitive tasks of cleaning all the parts by cutting, scraping, filing, sanding, puttying, and resanding. As in cutting off the big mold lines and injection pins, scraping off the smaller mold lines and other imperfections, filing to redo the folds and cloths that were lost due to cutting, scraping and filing, sanding to smooth everything out, and puttying where the gaps were too pronounced between assembled parts. I did drill out a hole in the hand of the figure that delivers the ammo box and passed a small copper wire through it and bent the ends. I then attached the ends to the appropriate ammo box after the figure was painted. After all the figures were assembled, I drilled out a hole in each figure somewhere where the surface will be in contact with the ground, and glued in a toothpick to hold the figure while painting. I primed the figures with Mr. Color Surfacer to even everything out and prepare the surface for paint. All the paints I used for the figures are from the German Field Grey set from Vallejo, which also comes with instructions on how to paint German uniforms, which were very helpful. I started with the trousers, painting them with dark sea green as the base color. I created highlights by adding blue-gray pale to the base coat in 3 gradual steps, covering less and less surface on the top of the folds. For the shadows, I added black to the base color instead and concentrated inside the folds and crevices. For the jacket, I started by applying a base color of German Field Grey and mixed in gradual amounts of sunny skin tone to create the highlights. And as with the trousers, I mixed black with the German Field Grey base color to create shadows. Then it was a question of painting all the accessories using reference pictures. I painted boots with different shades of brown and applied several heavy washes of black on top. For the flesh, I used brown sand as the base coat and gradually added flesh tone into the mix for highlight. And for the shadows, I added burnt cadmium red into the base coat. To even everything out and hide all the edges between shades, I used a diluted brown sand base color and painted over the entire face and hands as a sort of glaze. Again, I apologize for the bad video quality. I will do a dedicated video on the figure painting in the future, once I get more comfortable and once I find a figure worthy of my exceptional talent. So here are the completed figures. With that out of the way, let's talk about the base and diorama. I built the base out of blue construction styrofoam and sculpted it with an X-Acto knife. For the ground, I used some Sculpta mold, which is similar to papier-mâché, as a foundation for the terrain products that will be used later. I diluted it with water and white glue and spread it on the base, and then used an old brush to remove any unnatural shapes. After this was dry, I made the sides of the base with balsa wood, trimmed the top to mirror the shape of the terrain, and filled any unwanted gap with wood putty. I then sanded it and applied 3 coats of some thick Mr. Surfacer to fill in all the micro holes and other imperfections. For the groundwork, I used 2 AK Terrains products, Dark Earth and Light Earth. These are acrylic pastes of different colors and textures which can be diluted with water. And I love the smell! So I spread the paste using a cheap rigid brush, first using Light Earth for a dusty country road. I then sprinkled some cat litter to simulate small stones and add texture. The dark earth was used to represent a grass field with some bushes, small trees and whatnot.
Chocolate.
I did notice that these pastes dry significantly fast, so I had to add more of the light earth along with some water to blend the paste together to have a natural soft transition. To add even more texture, I added more cat litter and some dried seagrass that I randomly sprinkled on the surface and fixed gently with white glue diluted with water. I also added some dry leaves using marjoram leaves, used for cooking, which were also fixed with the water white glue mixture. As a final touch, I added some talus from Woodland Scenics to represent some bigger rocks to add some variation to the ground. These bigger rocks had to be fixed in place with a combination of ballast freeze from VMS and undiluted white glue for the more stubborn ones. Time for some happy little trees. I used seafoam and cut it to a desired size. I painted the bigger branches by actually using that dark earth product used for the ground. Since it already has a texture, it represents the tree trunk pretty well. I then drilled out holes in the base and fixed the trees with white glue. To add more volume to the trees, I sprayed, again, some water white glue mixture on the branches and sprinkled some more marjoram leaves to represent leaves. For the static grass, I used a static grass applicator. I brushed some white glue on the ground and sprinkled the grass with the applicator. Unfortunately, that's the only footage I have. Sorry. And the final touches to the ground was to blend all the rocks with their surroundings, since they looked a little fake and unnatural. So I mixed some light mud oil paint from Abteilung, which is a similar color to the ground with odorless thinner, and applied it randomly on the surface, covering the rocks and the surroundings. I then took some brown wash from MIG, diluted with thinner, and applied it randomly to simulate some shadows. For even deeper shadows, I used the dark wash from MIG, diluted with thinner, but using it more sparingly this time, applying it only in the deepest crevices. To finish it off, I reapplied the first coat made from the light mud oil paint color to weather the road and simulate some activity made from passing vehicles, and also to tone down the dark wash in some places. I just played around until I was satisfied. The final touches to the base was to paint the borders flat black. I used those cheap craft paints, so I think I didn't make less than 6 coats. In order to better integrate the gun to the diorama, I had to add some subtle weathering to the gun using the same products and colors that I used for the groundwork. So I used the light earth paste, heavily diluted with water, and applied it carefully on the model. I then blended it out using only water. And you have to be quick, because like I said earlier, that thing dries fast. I also used the light mud oil color to add a little bit more variation to the final weathering. And then it was just a question of placing each piece in the appropriate spot on the diorama and fixing it with white glue. We have hands 1, hands 2, hands 3, and you guessed it, Kunta. And the final touch was to place some empty ammo shells on the ground and add some gunpowder residue. And voila! Vignette completed. Overall, a fun little build. First time using AK Terrains products, first time using seafoam, first time using seagrass, first time using static grass and the static grass applicator. Lots of first times. If you enjoyed this video and what I do, please hit the like button and subscribe. And if you didn't like the video and what I do, please hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.